I woke up last night with a singular thought in my head, and I thought it would be fun to share it with all of you. On this trip, I've been doing a lot of reflection, and one of the things I've been reflecting on is why I've been able to be successful as an author when throughout my life, there just really isn't much that I've been successful at. You know, it's hard sometimes when you encounter someone who is doing something cool, maybe something that you want to do. It's hard to understand how they got there. And it's become increasingly clear to me over time that there are no overnight successes. Instead, we have people who are overnight successes 30 years in the making. There's a lot of truth to that statement because at the end of the day, nothing just springs up from nothing. And so my ability to write books, my success as an author, really didn't just appear one day. I mean, I started writing in 2015. I published my first book in 2018, and I've had a fairly compressed timeline as far as my author career goes. Most people don't make it to where I am quite as quickly. Now, some people make it faster, most people make it slower, but that's not the point. The point is that if you are jumping into this YouTube community or you're encountering my work for the first time, it's hard to understand everything that has gone into it to get me where I am. And so I've just been reflecting on that. You know, why is it that in this writing thing, I've found success where throughout my entire life, I have not been able to do that? I've tried my hand at a lot of different things. I've worked for other people. I've started my own business multiple times. All of them crashed and burned. I have just done a lot of different things. I've had a lot of experiences that did not turn out well, that did not turn out to be a success. And then suddenly, you know, I give this writing thing a shot and it's different. It goes differently. And then last night I had this sort of insight, this flash, and a principle came to mind that I've known for a while, but I sort of got a fresh perspective on it as I was wrestling with this question. And that's what I want to talk about today. For anyone who's new to this channel, my name is Seth. I'm a full-time fantasy author. I've written 22 books. I am both self-published and traditionally published. And I make these videos because there are a lot of bad books out there, and I don't want yours to be one of them. So let's cut to the chase. What is the principle that sort of illuminated this whole question for me? It's this. The state of your life is a reflection of who you are. And the inverse is actually also true. Who you are is a reflection of the state of your life. Now, as with all principles, this is a generalization. So don't string me up in the comments. Understand that this is a general truth. And while this is universally applicable, it is not always going to be true in every circumstance. That's how principles work. But principles are very helpful in identifying general methods for living. So I'm going to state the principle again. The state of your life is a reflection of who you are. So what does this have to do with my success and failure? Well, it has everything to do with it. The person that I am now is very, very different from the person that I was 5 years ago. So I started writing in 2015, and at that point, I was coming off of sort of a string of failed businesses. I'd been working sort of a menial labor job for 6 years, killing myself doing it, making no money, and I was tired of it. And so I had set out to improve my lot in life, and I was going to, try to come up with new jobs or new businesses that would make me money and get me out of that position. And I probably tried half a dozen things. And I would start a business and it would fail. And I'd start another one and it would fail. And I'd start another one and it would fail. And I just sort of kept at it. right? And I kept doing this, always looking for sort of the shortcut to get out of my situation. And nothing worked. Now, at the time, it was impossible for me to see. But as I reflect back on that period of my life, I realized that I was missing a couple of important things that determined whether I succeeded or not. The first was discipline. I just didn't have discipline. And so I would start a business and I would do a little bit of the work and then I would stop, and then I'd do a little bit of work and then I'd stop, and then I'd do a little bit of work and I'd stop, and the business would fail. And then I'd be like, man, why did this business fail? I can't believe this business failed. Well, it failed because I didn't have the discipline to carry through with the work. And at the end of the day, that was reflected in my life. My life was full of these failed businesses, these failed startups. Startup is a fancy term for I'm trying a new business. So then what changed? Well, in 2015, when I started writing, I started in that same vein. I would write a little bit and then I'd stop, and then I'd write a little bit and then I'd stop. But for whatever reason, by about 2017, I was writing more consistently. There's a huge mental health benefit to writing, and I think that was the thing that sort of carried me through that period. And by 2017, like I said, I was writing very consistently every day. That in turn developed discipline in me. And once that discipline began to take root, all of a sudden, I started to find myself making progress in a way that I had never made progress before. I found myself moving towards my desired destination in a way that I never had with any of those other businesses. And there are other examples of this same thing where my character traits were directly reflected in the circumstances of my life. My desire to avoid attachment to other people was reflected in the relationships that I had. My lack of commitment was reflected in the chaos that I seemed to always be living in. And like I said, my lack of discipline was reflected in this string of failed businesses and failed attempts to sort of work my way out of this position that I didn't like. So what changed? Well, I changed. I started to put in the work to develop the discipline I needed. Though I did it inadvertently at first, I did it without consciously trying it, but I did it. All of a sudden, I was making progress towards my goals. All of a sudden, I was finding myself in better relationships. And I had peace in my life instead of just chaos. I think that at the end of the day, when we are faced with circumstances that we don't like, obviously it's reasonable to say, okay, how do I change my circumstances? But if those circumstances are ongoing, if they're persistent, I think it's actually better to ask the question, how do I change myself so that my circumstances will naturally change? And it's not easy. It's hard work to develop discipline. It's hard work to develop positive character traits. But ultimately, it's also the only way to truly succeed. And as I said at the beginning of this video, my life is very different now. I've gone from a string of failed jobs and failed startups to making a full-time living as an author. I've gone from not being able to finish any project that I started to having written 22 books. And I think most importantly, I've gone from a place of despising who I was to being able to embrace myself, flaws and all, and really love my life. So if you're feeling any frustration with your current situation, if you're feeling like you can't figure out how to get out of your current situation and you want to, let me encourage you. It's hard, but it's absolutely worthwhile to take some moments to reflect on who you are and how your character traits are contributing to your situation. And then change them. As always, I hope this video was helpful, and just know that I am cheering for you.